Okay, so we're here again, and I wanted to go over assignments, peer review assignments 3 and 4. Now these are, they're the same assignment, they're the same rubric. It's just that the only difference between them, you're expected to do the same things, but one theory is going to be good, and the other theory is going to be like bad, right? So what I mean by that is that you like, so throughout the class, right, you'll pick a theory that you think is good, and then you'll explain and tell me why you think it is a good theory. And then the other one is that there's peer review assignment 4. And, so that one can, so if you did a good theory for number 3, you do a bad one for number 4. If you did a bad one for number 3, you do a good one for number 4, right? Keep in mind, you do have to pick 2 different theories, and then when you write the final paper, you have to talk about 2 different theories. There's some students seem to be confused by that requirement, so I'm just reiterating that point here. So, I want to talk a little bit about what I think happens and what why I think maybe students struggle with this assignment. So typically the first 2 peer review assignments are people tend to score pretty well on them. I think it's because they're easier. They're not as long and there's not as many components, and maybe it's easier to just kind of like whip it out. And if as the semester continues, I think sometimes students, maybe they get tired of reading, they become less engaged, not taking as many notes. Maybe there's some other pressures, and they, or maybe not. Maybe they stop attending class, and they end up, kind of slacking a little bit. It's more so for number 4, but it starts picking up in number 3. So I think what ends up happening is that students fall in the same trap of waiting to the last minute to write it. And then when you start writing about it, you realize that there's quite a bit of work. I've done some informal surveys, and most students say they wait until like the day of or until the day before to write it. And for peer review assignments 3 and 4, that's simply not enough time to do things well. So it kind of creates this position because we use part of this assignment for the term paper, because you didn't do it right the first time and then you don't go back and fix it later, it's still like incomplete. It's not good. Things are always going to be better and easier if you do it right the first time, even though it requires a lot of effort, rather than having to fix like a huge mess, right? It's easier to clean up a tiny pile rather than not. I mean, it's kind of like why I don't wear shoes inside my apartment, because I don't because sweeping and mopping is easier that way. I don't want to feel dirt on my feet, but if I wore shoes all the time, there'd be dirt on the floor. I'd have a dirty floor, and it's kind of gross, and it's a lot more work, and then I really don't want to do it like that, and then I avoid it. It's like that kind of thing. So other than that, right, other than like the time allocation, I think also students, maybe don't keep up with their readings, and maybe they don't do a lot of their own independent research on the assignment, and that, kind of creates like a problem. So other things that come up. So when I look back at a lot of the papers, right, sometimes what I think ends up happening is that I know students don't end up reading because they either end up directly quoting like my videos, or like what the stuff is written is like copywritten from like maybe lecture notes, but there's nothing that's from like a reading that was assigned. Or, students will also just like directly copy and paste from like a book and then put it in quotes and call it a day. And that tells me you can copy and paste, but that doesn't tell me that you know and understand the material. Remember that, I'm looking for your ability to analyze and assess and to teach me about, a particular theory, right? And so you have to list, define, and explain everything. So, I think that's something that you should be mindful of, is that, you're trying to teach me, and so you should take it as seriously as if you were teaching me for real, right? I like the way that I develop and assign readings, right, is very careful, and maybe it seems like not fun, or nothing like that. It's very intentional. And that's for a reason, right? I understand that maybe it's not, everyone's favorite, right? And, there are maybe like smaller things I can do, right? So, but in general, right, it's very intentional the way that I build and structure the class, right? The examples I've used, how I explain things and stuff like that. So keep in mind, right, is that you should be prepared and to teach me about the theory. I think the other part that comes up is that, sometimes like information is just incomplete, or, key concepts are not defined. I think students also have a tendency to pick theories that are harder to explain, and not ones that are like very easy to explain. Social learning theory is definitely like the most popular theory students pick. And I have no idea why, because it's really hard. There's so many components part into it, and that if you like are incomplete in any of them and you're not explaining it, it's not defined how it explains criminal behavior. What ends up happening is that then it's just like a poor explanation. Students never pick routine activities theory or deterrence theory, even though those are probably like the easiest ones to write about, right? You should always pick things that, are kind of easy to write about at this level, because you're just trying to get the term paper and pass the class, right? There's no need to really like impress or wow me, right? I'm going to be more impressed and wowed if you can explain a simple concept well. You have good examples, you have supporting information, and it's very detailed and well written. Like that's what's going to impress me. Taking something and then trying to challenge yourself, and doing something extremely difficult, and it's not done well, tells me that you didn't plan about it, or maybe you don't understand the theories well enough to know that that's something that maybe you shouldn't have talked about, or it was more than you could have like chewed on. So I think be like mindful of that, is that it doesn't. We're not necessarily looking to like change the world here with this, right? We're just trying to go ahead and get the job done. And I say that part of it is like, sometimes like this is true for me, like in grad school, right? Like I had a professor who would give exam questions, and you could pick, there would be like 10, and you could pick 7, right, to answer one. So there's 3 that you could skip. And he would say afterwards, it's like part of the test is seeing which questions you answer, because if you know the material, you know which ones are extremely difficult and you shouldn't waste your time to do. And you also know which ones are super easy, and those are the ones that you should pick, because then you'll be done quicker. And, at the time I hated it, but it was also kind of genius, and he's correct about it too. Patrick Grant, wherever you are, I hate you, but goddamn, I respect you. And I kind of love you, if I'm being honest. That's the truth. Shout out to Patrick Brandt, everyone. So, other things that come up, right? So, so whenever you're writing for peer review assignment 3 and 4, make sure that you pick a theory that you know and you can answer really quickly. Don't worry about trying to impress me. Make sure that you're telling me how it predicts crime. Each key concept related to the theory is defined and explained. And then there's like an overarching summary statement that tells me how and why this theory predicts crime or does not predict crime, right? I always want to know, so when we talk about patterns, right? So correlates of crime. So how does the theory explain why men commit more crime, or does it not explain why men commit crime, right? It's an either or kind of thing, right? And so sometimes a theory can explain a pattern, or it wasn't designed to, and so it's incomplete because of that. So that's another way to do it. Or maybe there's, not a built-in explanation, and that's it's a failing of the theory. Maybe there is one, right? So there's a lot of analysis, right? Because that goes into place. And there aren't any incorrect answers, but there's a lot of room to mess up if you don't understand the theory, right? Again, separation is going to be in the preparation. Other things that you should keep in mind, right? If you pick the criteria, so you have to pick 3 criteria, I would use the same ones that you picked from assignment 1. Pick 3 of them and use the same ones, right? And I would also use the same ones that you use in peer review 3 and use that for peer review 4, right? There's no need to double our work here. The same is true for the correlates, right? Use the same correlates that you picked in assignment 2 to do in assignment 3 and assignment 4. They should all be the same. Do less work, be consistent all the way through. And you should be good to go. And then, policy, right? Some students don't necessarily understand their policy, right? Or the theory of their policy, right? What I mean by that is, right, if you take social bond theory, right? So social bond theory, basically says that our attachments to other people, hold us back from committing crime. And so the more that we're invested in society, the less likely we are to commit crime, right? So that's the general idea. And then students will say, well, the policy implication of that is to lock people up forever. And that isn't like a policy implication that's informed by social bond theory. That is a policy. That is something that was certainly done in this country for a long time. But that policy is not informed by the theory. A better one would be to really, have good parenting classes, foster a good relationship between a child and their parent, normalize like the importance of like faith and family, and schools really, get people invested into the American dream so they don't want to like lose that as a stake in conformity. These are concepts I know you don't understand, but but like, that's going to be a better way. And then tell me if the theory is good or not, or bad, depending on which one, right? So that's the same kind of framework that you should do for each of those theories. Again, I'll urge you to please ask for help, ask for clarity, ask me, avoid doing group me. Please don't do it, because they don't know. They don't know. I know. Please ask me, right? And when you ask, make sure like, it's a question that you've thought about, you've done some research on, and it's not something that, could have been like easily answered. Also, one more note, no one fails the paper because of formatting, so don't overly stress about doing an APA. I'm more interested in like the quality of the content that you submit. But we'll go ahead and end this video now. And hopefully it was helpful. Maybe not, I don't know, we'll figure it out. But take care.